Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Eco D2C podcast, where we break down the growth strategies behind successful natural and eco-focused brands. This is Will from Russell Marketing,
Yeah.
and today is an interesting episode because Will is not at the helm of an eco brand per se, but he does specialize, and I'll ask him about this in a minute, so you can describe it yourself while I'm not putting words in your mouth. He does help brands validate their ideas and scale them early on with a couple of different marketing channels. So, Will, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us just a little bit about what you guys do?
Certainly. So I'm Will Russell, and I have a product launch marketing agency. And so essentially, we have a system that we bring to our customers and we implement on their behalf when they're launching their products. So often that is in crowdfunding, where a lot of our work happens, but often folks are running pre-order on their own website, or they're just launching their own e-commerce strategies. So the three channels we focus on are paid advertising, digital communications, and conversion rate optimization. So we don't deal with things like PR, with creative, which are very important pieces of a launch. We very much focus on the digital advertising funnel. And as I say, take the system we have and bring it and implement it on behalf of our clients.
Gotcha. So if I want to validate an idea, or if I want to launch a product and I already have some resources for creative, and well, depending if I do want to use PR or not, you would be a person to talk to about how to effectively get my product out there early on.
Correct. A lot of people come to us with an idea and they want to build that idea.
Hmm.
One of the lessons we've had being in a crowdfunding space is a misconception that, oh, launch a product and everyone's going to love it. And I think a lot of people rode the wave of crowdfunding a few years ago, which led to this belief that you can launch big campaigns very easily. And so more so now we're looking at helping people even validate that idea and make the decision, should we be launching this product in this manner on crowdfunding? Should we be launching with this price point or this unique selling proposition? So they don't go and invest tens of thousands of dollars in a launch which wasn't going to succeed in the first.
Gotcha. So if let's dive into a little bit of the strategies. So let's say I come to you and I have a product idea or even an existing company. What is the process that you guys will go through to validate that what I have is really something the market wants?
So what we implement is what we call a reservation phase, and we're essentially launching a pre-launch funnel, which is running ads to landing pages and getting folks to sign up to register their interest in whatever that offer is.
Mm-hmm.
And then as they move through from that, they've signed up, they get to the thank you page, they begin the email sequence, and we try and get them to put money down. Even if it's a $1 deposit or a $10 down payment,
Mm-hmm.
trying to understand what is the actual purchase intent. The funnels people use for launches now rely heavily on advertising, Facebook advertising in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And the Facebook advertising algorithm, pixels, exceptionally good at finding what you ask it to find. So if you ask it to find leads, it will find leads, which is great if you want leads, but the challenge for a lot of folks is, well, do they convert to buyers? So we're trying to find as early on in that funnel, are people showing purchase intent? Will they put money down? It doesn't have to be the full price, not at all. They're not buying the product. We're just trying to assess, are they showing the purchase intent? And by doing that right at the start early on, we can test all sorts of selling propositions, all sorts of creative, all sorts of audiences, and get a really good feel pretty quickly for which audiences are getting their credit card out and which aren't.
Gotcha. So just to clarify, for listeners, so specifically, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're talking about using social media ads that lead to probably some A/B testing some landing pages that you're doing A/B testing on, and if I understand right, you're not doing just it's not just running ads leading to, say, a website that maybe just has like one or two pages to it. It sounds like there's some interesting testing going on here. And the reason that I'd like to clarify that is I know I've spoken with a lot of companies that will, they have this idea of just getting onto, like Kickstarter, Indiegogo or something. And, when they hear ads, they won't know exactly where we're talking about running them. And they won't understand exactly what the process is for doing this kind of testing. So just to clarify, which platforms are at play here, and which, and in what way are they being used?
Okay, so I'm going to give the most common example. The most common example would be you're setting up Facebook advertising. The Facebook advertising traffic, we'll talk a little bit about the ads in a sec, but that traffic is taking you through to a landing page, which, as you suggest, is on a platform which can A/B test. So we're testing, sending traffic to lots of different pages, which have a different variation. Is it the imagery? Is it the hero image? Is it the headline? And then those users are signing up on that landing page and then moving through to a reservation page, the next step in the funnel. And that reservation page is also, we could be A/B testing. So sometimes we might be running an A/B test offering the product that saying it's going to be launched at a $199 price point and seeing how many people make a reservation, commit to that price point. We can also test $249 and we can see where the drop-offs are. So every single step we're testing something to identify purchase intent. But from a very high level, the main thing we want to find out in this whole step-by-step process within the first few weeks is which selling proposition of this product resonates with which audience. That's fundamentally what we want to know. Oftentimes, if a product has 5, 6, 7 different unique features that people are touting, we want to know which is the best one, because when we launch our product, especially if it's crowdfunding, you only get one page, one shot to put your best foot forward. So we need to know as quickly as possible what is going to be that best chance.
So if I'm your typical, sort of, mom and pop brand, maybe I have a product, maybe just have, the idea, maybe I'm still figuring out how to iterate my product. And I'm hearing, okay, so I run Facebook ads to A/B tested, or testing landing pages, which leads to an email list. So I'm going to be thinking, okay, so these are 3 different platforms that I'm going to have to get a handle on or find somebody who knows how to work them. What kind of budget minimum would you typically recommend to do this kind of thing properly?
From an advertising spend standpoint, we tell our clients they need $2,000. We don't always spend the full $2,000, but that's what we request as part of a budget for that phase where we're trying to validate this product offer. Then if you're working with an agency, you have service fees as well. But if you're doing it on your own, a couple of $1,000s, even less than that, $1,500, would give you, all you're looking for is like the thumbs up or the thumbs down on this offer, essentially, isn't it? And that budget would give you that.
Okay, but that's 2,000 just for the ads themselves. And when you talk about A/B testing landing pages, are we talking about, we're talking about physical products here. Is that typically a Shopify store?
So we use 2 main platforms, Kickoff Labs and Unbounce. Unbounce, I mean, they do a free trial for 2 weeks, so you can even hop on, get the free trial and hop out again. Kickoff Labs, I don't know if they do a free trial, but they're very affordable. They're basic offers. And I'm sure that Instapage or one of the other landing page platforms probably has a freemium option that people can take advantage of. So from a landing page standpoint, it will be very affordable, if not free. They just grab it for that short period of time. Then they'd need a functioning e-commerce of some sort where they can collect money, right? If they want to collect $1, they want to see if people actually put money down.
Well, let's pause here. So, but if we're talking about something that's in the idea stage, are we already taking credit cards, or are we simply trying to build the email list?
And I would take credit cards. When we're running these reservation phases, we
Mm-hmm.
are requesting people provide their credit card information, because a lead is great, but we
Mm-hmm.
want to find out, are these leads showing real purchase intent? And the
Gotcha.
best way of us doing that is, do they get credit card information out?
Understood. Okay. So from Facebook to, unbounce or kickoff, and then at this point in time, would you recommend that these businesses have an email marketing strategy in place and already have some of those sequences set up, or is that sort of like step two? Is that all a part
I
of this
mean,
first phase?
ideal case scenario is yes. From a user perspective, if they sign up to something, it's polite to have a follow up with them. But from
Mhm.
a testing functionality standpoint, no, you don't need to. No, we're just
Mhm.
trying to see what's that user's activity on that immediate step-by-step funnel. There doesn't have to be any follow-up at all, at least not
Mhm.
pre-planned.
Gotcha. Interesting. So how how much time is usually spent? And you guys are, you guys do specialize in this, so it's going to take a little less time for you than it's going to take for, anybody who's just trying to give this a crack. But how long does it usually take you to set up all of the different to set up the Facebook ads and to set up all these different landing pages and different messaging and different hero images that are being tested, assuming that they already have some of the creative?
So step one of our system is market research and planning, and that's when we do all this
Mm-hmm.
preparation. In terms of actual hours, I would say it takes our team maybe 10 to 15 hours to have the
Mm-hmm.
basic funnel set up, which, yeah, I mean, it's not an insignificant amount of time, but it's 2 business days. So if someone's starting a business, I think 2 business days, sitting down, cracking through it is a reasonable
Mm-hmm.
expectation.
Gotcha. And as far as, because we are talking about a sequence of steps here, let's say I have a bad idea, which statistically speaking is probable. Um, what does a good response versus a bad response from the market look like, or a
Yeah,
mediocre response?
mediocre responses are the tricky ones. We're really looking for a really good response or a really bad response. There's a space in the middle when it could go either way, and we don't like that. So
Mm-hmm.
the metrics we're looking at fundamentally is going to be conversion rate of people on the landing page to sign up as a lead. Just put their email
Mm-hmm.
address and say, yeah, I'm interested. Another metric we're going to look at is how many people then put down a reservation. So if we say to them, hey, congratulations, you're on our list now, guarantee an extra 5% discount by giving us $1 now, right? And we ask for the
Mm-hmm.
credit card information. How many people convert into that? And then I would say the other main metric we'd be looking at would be the cost per lead in the first place. So how
Mm-hmm.
much of these people cost you to bring into the funnel? And those 3 metrics are all affected a lot by all the other metrics in the funnel, like the cost to reach the audience in the first place, for example.
Sure.
But fundamentally, those are the kind of 3 key ones that will tell you which direction you're going in. And from a cost per lead standpoint, when we're running advertising on Facebook, we're looking for a sub $1.50 cost per lead.
Mm-hmm.
When for the landing page, people clicking an ad comes to the landing page and signing up saying, yeah, I'm interested. We want to be looking at above 20% conversion
Mm-hmm.
rate on that page. And then of those people, how many people put their credit card information in? I would say 6-7% is going to be a good number for us.
Okay. Um, and so that mediocre sort of gray area, not good, hard to figure out which way it's going to go. What does bad look like?
Bad looks like, and I want to emphasize, I always emphasize this to the clients I speak to. If you get bad data with our validation phase, we're
Mm-hmm.
not saying your idea is terrible. I don't want to say that to people. What we're saying is we think your idea being launched as an e-commerce product with this kind of advertising funnel is not going to be a success.
Gotcha.
They should look at other avenues. So a bad funnel would look, for example, we had one of those reservation funnels running recently, and the reservation conversion rate was about 0.05 or something. So it was a long, long way below what we wanted. And that was a sign to us saying, you know, that maybe that product could succeed. But for us to go from where we were at, 0.05, to where we needed to be, was just too great a gap to fill in the time frame and the budget they had available. And we didn't think anyone could. So we had to say, hey, the discrepancy is too large. We don't think this is going to be right for this kind of launch. So we recommend you take your budget and use it in a different way.
No, that makes total sense. There's a lot of interesting conversation out there, or debate on, you know, like how much you really need to spend in order to get, you know, quality results in different platforms. And, you know, there's a lot of people trying to implement more incremental strategies. Maybe they do a funding, maybe they don't. I know you mentioned a 2,000 number for Facebook ads. If we were speaking with a business owner who, let's say, didn't have, you know, $2,000 a month to put into it, maybe they had, you know, $500-$600, would it even be worth their time to do these kinds of tests, to get something that's at least directional, or is that just too small a sample of data set?
I would say that no data in that context is going to be too little to tell you what you want. Because even when we're using the $2,000 budget, as I just said, we're not saying to people, your idea isn't going to work. We're saying that the direction it's heading in, we don't think it can work with the system. And so the less spend you have, the less confident you can be in the data, but you're still going to get the direction. So you could spend $500, see, you know, 10 people sign up, so you spend $50 per lead. That would tell me the way this offer's positioned is not going to succeed. That's enough to tell me that. So I think you can certainly do it in even smaller bets. It just, you may not have as clear-cut data and confidence moving forward.
Gotcha. So if I only have my site's landing page, maybe I don't have, you know, the money to hire, you know, someone like yourself, or I don't have anybody in my team that really knows how to do this, and I have, you know, a pretty, you know, a budget that's in the hundreds of dollars, it might still be worth doing, you know, even some like lowly financed experiments just to see if there's anything that comes back that would be directional.
Yeah, and I would say this whole reservation phase where we're really validating an offer with this funnel, that's something we implement as an agency, and we know that stuff, and for someone who doesn't, that might seem overwhelming. So let's go even more back, and let's take a step even with even more simplicity. Whenever we speak to prospects, we run we call a micro campaign, and that's to tell us, should we even submit a proposal for this product?
Okay.
And that is essentially a Facebook lead ad. So it's an ad option in Facebook, super easy. And all we do is we set up a few different lead ads to a few different audiences with a couple of different positioning. Like maybe if it's a sustainable product, you can focus heavily on the sustainability. But maybe it's also a fashionable product. So another ad can focus really heavily on the fashion angle. So we're going to run a few of these ads. You can put them at $10 a day, $20 a day for a few days, and you can see what data comes back. Again, it's not going to be defining data, but it's enough data to tell you, should I take the next step? Should I invest $1,000? So you could even go that simple. And with that kind of test, you're not going to get commerce data. You're not going to get transactions. You're not going to get even email engagement rates or anything like that. But you do get CPM, which is the cost to reach the audience by ads. And if your CPM is high, like $80, let's say, you're going to have a heck of a time, even if your product's the best product in the world, you're going to have a heck of a time building a profitable advertising strategy. So you can look at the CPM, which is the cost to reach the audience, the CTR, how much interest people have in it. And then the sign up on Facebook, which is a lead, different kind of lead. So you can see those basic metrics. And I wouldn't bet my house on that data being significant, but it's enough to tell us if we see a CPM of $80, we're not going to work with that project because it's just going to be too big a hurdle.
Right. It's don't bet the farm, but you know, it's at least directional. And
yeah.
What's the budget for those little micro campaigns typically? Because you guys are trying to conserve costs as well when it comes to like testing things out early on.
Yeah, it saves us a lot more costs to rule out a product at that stage than to commit time to a product which doesn't end up being successful. So
for sure,
I'm okay with that. But I think if someone could put $100 into this micro campaign, they could end up very easily with a situation which tells them, do not do this any further, do not spend any more money on this, or yes, people seem super excited, let's spend a bit more money on this.
Right. No, it just seems like it would be a very, I mean, I can just think of so many brands that, you know, they build out their manufacturing, they have, you know, they put their heart and soul into products that they're convinced the world wants, and they haven't tested to see what the market response is. So this kind of like early market validation and, you know, just using some of these tools to really see seems, I mean, invaluable, frankly.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of folks we speak to are at that ideation stage. A lot of folks, I come to them and say, well, let's run a validation phase, this reservation funnel. And they say, well, I'm going to launch anyway. Well, if they're going to launch anyway, then
yeah,
regardless of what the data tells them, it's, you know, it's risky. It's a risky business.
100%. What if I've gone through all of these stages and, you know, I wasn't aware that I could do these kinds of tests, and maybe like I have all of these things down. In your opinion, would it be worth my time to go back and maybe do some of this testing that I didn't before, just to see how the market is reacting with it? Like for businesses that already have some legs underneath them, when do you think this would still be worth their time, and when do you think it would be a bit late, if ever?
I think it's almost always going to be worth the time. But the question is how high a priority it would be versus what else is going on at that stage of the business. But if you have product ideas, if you have new ideas to release to the audience, potential products, potential services, if you have new creatives you want to test, if you have, let's say you like the idea of a certain marketing video but don't invest $5,000 to get that video done without testing it, you test it in that format, a simpler version at a low budget. Most people would have positioned their product with one core unique selling proposition that they think is the best one, and then have launched. And maybe it's a great one, could have done very well for them. But there was always going to be more. So any successful product could always go back and test these other selling points and see, you know, is it the sustainability or the fashion or the functionality,
right,
or whatever it is that's driving more engagement. And they might learn that, hey, sustainability does very well, but this fashion angle, actually, we're getting double click-through rate here. Maybe we should put some more money in there and see what happens. So I think no business is at too late a stage, but if you've already got a successful product selling well, it may not be your highest priority to go back and start retesting that.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, I totally hear you. That's something that I have to deal with clients all the time is, you know, we have a heavy focus on working with ecologically focused brands, but depending on what they're making, like that might not be what is most important to their audience, right? Like they're gonna, you know, at minimum, you know, your audience is typically gonna want something that functions as well, if not better, than what the standard brands are in the market in that particular category. And some categories, it really matters to them if it's sustainably made or gluten free, if we're talking about something in the food space, um, in certain categories in the food space. But it all depends on what your audience is actually looking for. It might even be important to them, but it might be bullet point number 3, 4, or 5, and not
Right.
1 or 2.
Do you see a lot of the clients you work with, they're pushing the social good, they're pushing sustainability, but in reality, that's nice, but it's often not the number one, this is why I'm going to buy your product.
It entirely depends on what category they're in. There's certain categories we look at where that is a primary concern. Let's say like you have a product that is one of very few vegan options in its category, and there is a lot of search volume for that kind of product. Like that's something that you might want to have sort of front and center. But if if we're looking at what kind of keywords competitors are converting for, what kind of raw search volume some of these keywords are getting on different platforms, it's always good to include, in my opinion. But like a really good brand story is all the more important, right? As a lot of these platforms get more competitive and more brands really focus on growing their direct-to-consumer presence online. Anything that will sort of humanize you and connect you with your target audience, in my opinion, and feel free to chime in, is valuable. But ultimately, you have to be speaking to what their pain point is, and you have to make that the focus of your messaging. So it's, in a lot of categories, it's a good to include instead of a must. It'll be an extra thing.
Yeah, I would agree. And you touch on personalization. That's another aspect of launches that oftentimes entrepreneurs don't want to partake in. They don't want the transparency. They don't want to put their face forward like that. They want to hide, not in a negative way, but they want to hide behind the brand name. This is who the brand is. Don't worry about me as the founder. Don't worry about the team. But we are a brand. And especially when you're launching now, with all the skepticism there is on crowdfunding campaigns, with pre-orders, so many people being let down, there just has to be transparency. The story, who you are, what it's all about. And anyone that's putting their brand name out there first and not introducing themselves and who are the people behind the business is going to have a harder time getting that product traction.
So that's an interesting statement. What is the trend of letdowns and bad experiences that you're referring to there?
So just generally on crowdfunding, a lot of campaigns have failed to deliver. A lot of big campaigns have failed to deliver, and because of that, and that's failed to deliver, either they've literally failed to deliver a product, and so people are just out, or they failed to deliver a product of any sort of quality that's useful to anyone. So when that happens once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, eventually the crowdfunding user backer is just, why take that risk? However great the product looks, why take that risk? So we do a lot of work with Indiegogo, the company, and so we get to see, sometimes the frustration across campaigns. So we might be advertising one campaign, and people are complaining on the comments thread about a different campaign entirely, and that's hard for the campaigner, because they've got this product, they've got this idea, and the skepticism, this objection they're facing is nothing to do with them. And so the best way of trying to counter that is pushing hard on credibility, part of which is putting yourself out there. If you're not anonymous, it's a lot easier for people to get to know you, understand you, connect with you. That's something that Colin McIntosh, was on the last episode. He did that in abundance. His brand was him in that launch, and he was up all hours of the night talking to customers, responding within 20 minutes to every message, and that transparency, that personality that he gave everything, and he put his hand up and I'm here, talk to me, deal with me, ask me anything. that gave just so much credibility and trust that his campaign was easily able to step over those skeptical objections and say, yeah, we're here. You know, if something goes wrong, you know who I am. You know where to find me, and so you can trust me, and that really helps.
So attached to that, so because there's a lot of these letdowns happening, how fully baked do you recommend the cake be before products launch? So as Khan, talked about in detail in the last episode, he really encouraged companies to, not wait until they had a product fully formed in their hands before necessarily selling it. And all the reviews show, he delivered a product that is, very high quality. People love it. He executed extremely well on that end, beginning to end. Because there is this trend, is there do you check with clients to see how far along the process they are, or how far along in having your manufacturing or your prototypes would you recommend having things together before launching onto one of these platforms?
I would say that by the time you launch on the platform, you have to be, the time frame between then and shipping product has to be reasonable. I would say less than 6 months. So if it's less than 6 months, that generally means that for most products, manufacturing conversations are going to be underway, if not somewhat further down the road than that. That doesn't mean that you have to have all the manufacturing decisions made when you start running the early testing. You can do your early testing phase, get your data, then commit to your manufacturing, commit to those partnerships, and then start building up for the launch. But I think a lot of people underestimate manufacturing complications, costs, and therefore they'll launch without having that in place, and they'll end up being 6 months, 12 months late on delivering product.
Something always goes wrong.
Always goes wrong.
Always. Count on that. Would you recommend having a prototype in your hands by the time you launch a campaign? So much of this conversation has been about the process before day one, because day one, having all that legwork done is so important. But you don't necessarily need to have a product fully formed to do any of the testing, or to see if how much intent to buy there is. But by the time someone launches a crowdfunding campaign, would you recommend they at least have the prototypes in hand and have an idea of their manufacturing, or have you seen somebody actually get that running afterwards?
I have. The platforms are much more restrictive about that now, because so many people have let their backers down. So now, especially if you have a hardware product, you're going to have to show. Indiegogo, for example, have a product stage section on each campaign, and the user can therefore see how far in your stage are you. And if you're nowhere, then you don't have as much credibility. If you have a working prototype and you've proved that to Indiegogo, and they can give you the verification of prototype or in production, then again you're moving past that skepticism from the user, and it's an additional boost of credibility. So I guess there's some products where you could get away with that, but in most cases I would say you should have a working prototype. You should have understanding of what your manufacturing is going to look like. You may not have to put the order in yet, but you should have things in place when you're about to start basically asking people to give you money for the product.
Gotcha. So do you have to send Indiegogo an example of the product? Do you have to send them a prototype?
If you want the prototype verification, and you have to send them videos of the product working. So their trusted safety team is the ones that take care of that. I don't know what Kickstarter's process is, but I know Kickstarter is stricter than Indiegogo, so I'd imagine they have very similar processes.
Gotcha. Okay. So thank you for diving into that. So just to bring it back to, the different sort of stages that a company will be, taken through as they're executing these processes. So we've gone through, it's been micro tested for early directional validation. There's been a more thorough testing from Facebook to A/B testing landing pages to email. Hopefully, there's an email strategy in place, but a lot of the more important questions are being answered regardless. What is the time frame from running that to, and I'm assuming crowdfunding is the next step here that you guys do. What does that runway look like for the time period for going through that first initial stage versus actually publishing on one of these crowdfunding platforms and getting that underway?
Generally, the time from completing a reservation phase and deciding this is a go or no go, if you're deciding it's a go, there's then going to be about a 6-week period. Generally, manufacturing will come into play and affect things. So from a marketing standpoint, our ideal case scenario is about a 6-week period from then until go live on platform.
Gotcha. And so then, can you talk me through what comes next? I know that that first day of the launch is a very big deal.
Yeah. So we validated the product, we decided what the offer is that we're going to launch with, and then we're going to move into this pre-launch phase, which is all about acquisition and engagement of those prospective customers. So once we've defined what it is we want to offer and which audiences it is that are most likely to purchase this product through this validation phase, then we just ramp up as quickly as possible to build that email list, to build that list of prospective customers as fast as we can within that time frame. The longer that pre-launch lasts, the lower the conversion rate of those leads. So leads that come in 3 months prior to launch, I don't know the actual numbers, but trend to a much lower conversion rate than those that come in 2 weeks before launch. So really, that 4 to 6 weeks before you launch is when you would want the bulk of the audience collection. And so that's all about acquiring those audiences through a similar method. We're using advertising on Facebook to landing pages. We can continue to run tests and work out which images perform well, which headlines perform well. And then as they transition into our audience, they sign up as a lead, as an email subscriber. We're turning our ask of them from, are you going to get your credit card out? Because we've already decided who we think is going to do that. Instead, we're going to ask them to take some sort of action to help us improve our likelihood of success at launch. So that could be a referral option. So if you share with your friends for certain incentives, so that helps us get the audience to do the marketing for us. Or it's going to be requesting another touch point. One of the biggest challenges people have in crowdfunding or in product launches is people opening emails. A good open rate for us, the best open rate we'll see on our first email, our benchmark is about 45%, which is good for industry standard, but that still means that 55 people are not. And so they've already signed up, so how can we ensure we get an extra touch point with them? So for example, once they've signed up as an email, we might want to ask for their phone number. We might want to ask for them to sign up to a Facebook Messenger so that we can communicate with them through that method as well. Or we're going to ask them for feedback. So collect insights about which features they like the most, what colors they want, what accessories they want, what additional upsells we can do. So all sorts of things are going on once they've signed up, but predominantly it's about acquisition, how big can we grow this list, the budget we have, and engagement. How can we engage that list to help us mold the launch day?
Gotcha. So your email strategy at that point becomes crucial, it sounds.
Yeah, and lots of people have very different strategies on this, and we've gone back and forth. You'll see examples of an email a day telling the story of the founders and feeding people an introduction. You see people send no emails until maybe the day before launch. There's all sorts of different options. We try and send a handful without giving away too much information. we see the email engagement trend down throughout the project. Every email generally will trend down a little bit. So we don't want to send too much pre-launch because we want that launch day to be big. So we'll send a handful of emails, engaging the user, getting them excited, preparing them for the urgency of taking action on launch day, and making sure that, just making sure that if anyone's engaged with us in any capacity, they know on what day we launch and how they can purchase the product.
So up until, just to keep all the platforms in mind, so at what point do you stop A/B testing, if you stop A/B testing, and at what point are you maintaining consistent consistent spend with the Facebook ads throughout this time, or are you sort of ideally like turning up so many of these things dependent on budget and the results you're getting in these ads in the first place, but in an ideal world, are you sort of turning up the heat on Facebook ads as you're turning up the heat on email as well? Are all of these things running straight through the Kickstarter, or is there a line in which some things are just stopped and more resources focused on other channels?
For us, we're always A/B testing. That will always be happening. We will stop lead generation at launch. Other agencies don't, but we do. So once launch happens, all of our focus from an advertising budget standpoint goes to sales ads. We're not trying to gather leads, we're trying to gather sales. The email strategy runs throughout the whole project. We'll continue communicating with the folks who come in. The advertising budget, generally, in that final 6 weeks before launch, it's going to be pretty consistent, because we've already optimized, we've already tested, we know where we want to focus our spend, so we go and focus it, and we're able to project pretty well. Then during the campaign, we hit it very hard at launch, and we hit it very hard at the end, and then during that middle of the period, week 2, week 3, it really depends. Ideally, you're on an upward trajectory. You can spend a little bit more every day because you're continuing to get good return. But the reality of product launches is that oftentimes you have a really strong start and a really strong end, and then the middle dips. And if the middle dips, it dips in all areas. So sometimes folks will rein in ad spend a little bit, rein in their marketing efforts, and then really save it for the final week that it's double down.
Gotcha. So, okay. So a lot of these things are going to be kept running throughout. Email is something that you guys, will cut off at one point. What does a successful day one look like?
Successful day one would be reaching 25 to 30% of how much you want to raise. If you want to raise $100,000, you want to hit 25, 30K on day one. I would love to hit 50K on day one. Like if I can hit 50% of the internal funding goal, how much you want to raise, by internal funding goal, I mean like what's up here, how much you want to raise in your head, then that's great. But general rule of thumb, you can hit 25 to 30% on that day one. You're putting yourself on a good trajectory for a successful launch.
Gotcha. And what do the days following that look like? Now that we're on to Indiegogo or Kickstarter or whatever platform we happen to be using, what does successful optimization and growth look like from there?
So day one will ideally be let's work around $100,000 project. It's easy for numbers. Day one, you'll see about 25,000 come in, knock on wood. Day two, you'll then probably see about 15,000, so it will drop off quite substantially. Day three, again, it will drop off further. Maybe you're seeing 7,500. And then you're going to enter this period where things just get quiet, and it's up to you as a campaigner to try and, if you imagine an EKG, like a heart machine, you want to spike as much as you can throughout the project through PR. That's where advertising comes into play. That's when promotion on the platform comes into play. And that happens, and oftentimes you can pick up that scale again, but a lot of projects will just continue to bumble along. And, in the example of a $100,000 raise, they might be raising $1,000 a day for 3 weeks. and then that last week, it will jump up again and again and again as they approach the campaign. And it'll be those first 3 days and those final 3 days when perhaps 50% of their funds come in, and the rest is more, incremental gains.
Gotcha. And those, and as far as, because there's different ways to get those spikes, you're talking about PR and off-platform sort of measures. As far as on the platform goes, how useful are those milestones that people will set? Like, if we get this certain amount of money, we'll do this, kind of thing. Do you see, and I realize this is relative to, to the brand or, case at hand, but are there certain combinations that you see working better than others? If I time this milestone with a PR push, or if I time this milestone with, dumping more into Facebook ads, like what do you see, just in generally speaking, what do you see being effective?
I would say that collecting input and giving ownership of a campaign to the people participating is going to help you direct what you should be doing in that regard. So a lot of people will come with predetermined plans of stretch goals, what they can do during the project, or how they can improve their product. But as we talked about at the start, there might be very limited research around that. So if you have a big day one, you bring in 500 backers. We always say, well, ask them, what do they want? If you have an idea for 4 or 5 different ways you could boost a campaign, you could introduce new colors at a certain price point or something like that, or you could introduce additional accessories. Let's say you have 3 or 4 ideas. Ask the people that have come in and already supported you, and when you get that kind of information, that's what should be dictating what your next steps are. A lot of people launch these ideas for the sake of launching them. Stretch goals is a great example. Doing it because everyone else does it, and then they end up with some really shoddy offer, which no one wants anyway. So of course they're not going to aspire to help you get there. And I think it's just a reminder that with any of this stuff, we have all these tactics we talk about, Facebook ads, stretch goals, and all these data points we look at. But ultimately, the strategy overall transcends these platforms, right? The strategy fundamentally is create something people want and ask people what they want and help them build you this business. If they're investing in your business at the pre-order stage, they're supporting you at this pre-order stage, they're trusting you, make them a part of it, make them feel ownership over it, and they'll help you go a long way and do your marketing for you.
Right. So a brand owner might set a stretch mark for like, hey, I bet everybody's going to want t-shirts, but if you're already sending out emails and you can just ask them, hey, would you like t-shirts?
Right. That's a simplified, yeah, exactly. Like, on a campaign, you're going to be sending updates to folks who have purchased. It's very easy to send one question polls. People are very engaged at that point. They send them simple one question polls, What would you like to see? Give them a list of 6 things. What would be most likely to purchase? What would you like to see us launch? Give them the option. And if 70% of people say option A versus option B, there's your answer.
Gotcha. So biggest push at the beginning of the crowdfunding, and also another big push at the end of it. In the middle, hopefully you've done your homework and you know what your audience is actually looking for, and you can have stretch goals that are relevant to them, or maybe you've spoken with a relevant publication that can, talk up your launch. Do you guys touch into the PR? I guess you already said, sorry, you already said that you guys don't touch the PR part.
Yeah, we work with a lot of partners in the PR space, but that's not something that we specialize in. So, we like to give guidance and we like to consult and advise people on what they should be doing, but we're not the ones reaching out to the media outlets and pitching.
Fair enough. So before we get into the post-crowdfunding part, is there anything, what are some common what are some common pitfalls that you see companies falling into along that process? And is there anything that that I should be asking you about how the crowdfunding process works that I haven't thought of?
Hmm. The most common pitfalls, I would say, one is validation. People coming to market with something they think people want and not validating that. I would say another pitfall we often see is a big discrepancy between what it costs to do this and what people think it costs to do. And then that ties in with what I kind of see as like an iceberg perspective, where people, especially in crowdfunding, they look at other campaigns, and I hear a lot of people say, well, our competitors raised $1 million and we can do the same. And they're just seeing the top of that iceberg. They're not seeing what's involved in that. And so a lot of folks who are raising big money like that now, they have big audiences they're bringing to the table. So they have big funds they're bringing to the table. But people can look at campaigns and say, well, they raised $1 million and not know that they invested $500,000 in ads and the campaign was actually unprofitable. Mm-hmm. So it's this discrepancy people have of what they see publicly and not really knowing what's going on under the hood. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of what we do is education around that and making sure that expectations are set. And we can do that, and people coming to us are obviously doing their research because they're coming to us as part of their research. They want to find a marketing partner. So they're doing the right thing. But it's for folks that launch with that massive discrepancy, they haven't done enough research, really. It's just simple, mm-hmm. Do a little bit of online searching, speak to a few people like us, and they'll know. They know what they need to do. There's a plethora of advice out there on these things. Mm-hmm. So it's just preparation. I mean, just do your research, make sure you've got your numbers lined up, and follow the step-by-step process that is available on all sorts of different courses and through other people.
Right. No, I totally hear you. There's a lot of brands will get online on the different platforms, and they'll be so excited about their product, or their friends and family be so excited about their product that they have this sort of, oh, we'll put it, we'll make it, and then they will come, kind of thing.
And they don't come.
And they don't, or they just don't in the numbers that are needed in order to make it work. And so now the crowdfunding campaign is over. Hopefully it's been successful, and it's reached its targets. Assuming, and this is a very big assumption, as we've already talked about, assuming that a company is on top of it, and they have their manufacturing, like they're sending out, they're actually fulfilling whatever promises they made. What is the next step as far as marketing goes? Do you guys tend to do follow up with your clients, or is that more of like a now on to whatever platforms are or are not relevant to this brand as far as e-commerce goes?
Well, yeah, we continue working with a number of our clients. They've launched often on a crowdfunding platform, or they've launched some sort of pre-order, or they've even launched their actual e-commerce, and they need to scale that up. And because we've worked with them on that launch, we have a lot of information and data, and we know what to do. So they'll continue working with us. So I would say the life cycle of our clients ends once they're underway and in their e-commerce. Generally, we're not working with folks long-term into e-commerce, but we're often working with them over that transition for the early stages of that Shopify or whatever the website is they're launching on. I would say the biggest things they've got to focus on, or the biggest things we recommend focusing on outside of the manufacturing, is better defining and understanding the funnel they're going to have on their website. So one of the biggest advantages you have when you launch on a crowdfunding platform is it's in the crowdfunding platform's best interest to make the checkout flow and make that user experience as perfect as possible. And so they worry about that for you. when you're launching on your own website or you're transitioning to your own website, that responsibility is yours. So we'll often see a lot of people will go from crowdfunding and they'll have a great conversion rate, let's say 4%. So for every 100 people that visit their campaign page, 4 people make an order. They then go to their website and that drops to 1. And without, again, looking under the hood and trying to understand why that's dropping to 1, they're going to be in a bit of a flummox. So we need to work out what's causing that, and they need to identify how they can replicate some of the success they've had on a crowdfunding platform where they've rented this land, essentially, how they can replicate that success on their own platform, and then what it means to scale. A crowdfunding pool of users, even though there's millions of them, is still very small in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, they can now open the floodgates to anyone off crowdfunding, to the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. And they need to have a strategy in place to make sure they're able to take advantage of the lessons they've learned and scale that up. So one example would be, even if 5% of their community buys during crowdfunding, that's a good result. That's a good result. 95% didn't. So we want to find out why. And so the more feedback they can collect from the people that didn't buy, and the more feedback they can collect from people that did, and say, well, why did you buy? What was it that led you to buy? Then that data from that crowdfunding launch will be so valuable in repositioning their offer to the broader e-commerce market.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes total sense. I mean, by definition, the crowd that's coming to you, to your crowdfunding page is, minimum they showed interest in what you're doing.
Right.
And when you move into the general, a more general audience, your conversion rates are of course going to drop because, especially depending on where you're doing your advertising and how you're reaching people, like you might be fishing in the ocean as opposed to trying to get just a certain percentage of people who've already demonstrated that they want your product or they're interested in your product. It's just it's a different animal at that point.
Yeah, and just the user experience on a website, can they use PayPal to check out? Are they using Visa cards only? Mm-hmm. How does the shipping process change depending on country? There's all these pitfalls that you don't have to worry about on crowdfunding, but you would have to worry about if you want to have a successful e-commerce funnel with advertising set up and underway.
Right. No, I hear you. It's super interesting helping brands, after they've once they've reached this point where they've done a crowdfunding campaign, ideally they've done something, if they're launching on Amazon or some of these other sites, ideally they have some momentum going into it. Sometimes they don't. Oftentimes I would say they don't. And it's interesting scaling them on e-commerce platforms after something like this, after they've executed a campaign like this, because you really notice the difference between launching a product and a brand that already has some momentum going into it versus brands that are simply trying to carve out their own space. Because with Amazon in particular, a lot of companies have, they've read a lot of the get rich quick stories. They might know a couple other brand owners who are having a lot of success on Amazon. I think a lot of them underestimate how important it can be to have brand presence off-site to grow quickly. And especially because the competition is heating up on a lot of these marketplaces. Having effective off-platform strategies to get that halo effect and to have a multi-channel strategy going, just across the board, I'm seeing is more and more important for brands to really launch and grow.
And harder and harder in some situations. I would say the two pieces of the puzzle that we work on when it comes to product launches is the ads and the email, and they're super important, but they're not the only assets. As you talked about, there should be this multi-channel strategy, and whether it's post-launch when they're looking at Amazon, their own Shopify website, retail, whatever distributors, whatever their multi-channels are then, or it's during the launch phase, when they're looking at what are the acquisition channels they're using to bring people to our launch, multi-channel is so important. But more and more, we see people relying on ads. And again, this is why people have this like iceberg perception error, where they see these big campaigns and they underestimate what it takes to get there. So a big campaign in 2015, a big launch, they would have had a big percentage of their raise would have come from word of mouth. You know, the multi-channel strategy of organic, press picking up bits and pieces and getting that viral halo effect. Now, PR is more skeptical, word of mouth dropped. So more and more people are relying on paid advertising, which increase the costs even more. So not only are the cost of advertising increasing, but your overall cost of acquisition is increasing because advertising is now a bigger percentage of your overall acquisition. So the costs are increasing more and more, and it's harder and harder in our experience to get that word of mouth, get that halo effect outside of our particular advertising efforts.
Absolutely.
And I might say I don't work much on Amazon, so I don't know what that looks like. But yeah, I imagine it's the same challenge we face when they put all their eggs in one basket. If that basket doesn't deliver,
just clarifying that it is like brand dependent, it is category dependent. Like Amazon is really heated up as far as the competition goes over the last year especially, but it's been a growing trend. Like there was a time when you could make $10,000 a month selling something that you could simply buy from a Chinese manufacturer, and you could make good selling HDMI cables, or really a lot of basic commodities. And it's changed immensely because now, one, the manufacturers themselves are on the game around the world, and two, like if you have a product that's not easily defendable, or a brand that is really uninteresting, then it's going to be a lot harder. There's imitators that will crop up on the platform. There's counterfeiters. There's all kinds of issues that people have to deal with. Amazon does not particularly. Amazon cares a lot about its customers. It does not put as much attention into taking care of its vendors at all. Things break all the time.
What do you mean by defendable? If brand is defendable?
So for instance, if there's nothing that really differentiates my product than other things in the category, or if it's just really easy to produce. So for example, I'll be in contact with some sellers that I know who they'll have an incremental entrepreneurship kind of approach to selling things on Amazon, and Amazon will be either their sole platform that they sell it, or it'll be the main focus, and they'll just look for gaps in the market. And then they'll go make that product, or they'll go order that product from any given factory, and then they'll sell it on Amazon. But if they're selling something that is, one, they don't have any rights to because they're white labeling it, or two, it's just something that is really, like, there's no patent on it. It's really easy for someone else to make it. Like, that's what I mean by not defendable. And it's not to say that there aren't there's people who still make money doing this. By all means, like if you can find that gap, or if you can execute it well, then go for it. But it's getting harder and harder to do. And so products that are not so easily replicated, and brand identities that consumers really identify with, those are increasingly key to having success on Amazon and across e-commerce channels in general. If you have, if I want to go sell silverware, on this platform, it's going to be a race to the bottom as far as pricing goes. Or I have to have like the recognized brands for having really great silverware that people are willing to pay a little extra for. There's a lot of people out there who will, if they can get like $1 less margin and it's razor thin, like they'll go for it.
Yeah.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
So that's most of the questions that I had for you here. Thank you so much Thank you so much for your time, and I really appreciate you diving into some of the details of validation and how to execute this, and diving into the numbers. But um, this is very useful information, and hopefully for whoever happens to be listening, it lifts the curtain. It sort of separates the curtain. You can see behind, to see how some of this machinery works, and what some of the metrics for some of the standards for success uh, or not achieving success looks like with this. But
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Is there anything that you wanted to ask or discuss, or maybe something I missed before we end the call?
I think the only thing I would re-emphasize to anyone that might be listening now or in the future is the importance of that product validation and the affordability of that product validation before going all in. We see too many folks betting their house on product offers and not seeing them deliver, and they didn't need to do that. There's lots of easy incremental little bets that you can make before going full steam ahead with something, and that's going to put you in a much better position. So just make sure everyone is aware of that and takes those early steps before going full steam ahead.
I couldn't agree more. Will, thank you so much. And yeah, for everybody who's listening, I hope you got some useful bits out of this that you can apply to your own business, and we'll see you next time.